Welcome back to another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again. SJ, pretty fun weekend of football, I thought, overall.
Yeah, I've seen some unexpected things, some maybe expected things from some teams, and we did okay. We're gonna have maybe need of a bit of a bounce back week here this week, but we'll get back on the right track. But definitely some interesting outcomes, and maybe some things we thought maybe weren't even possible, kind of shaking out there on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a fun weekend of games. Yeah, our picks, not the best, not the best week we've had, but we're gonna bounce back, and we did okay. I mean, it wasn't a total weekend failure, so we'll
I
talk
mean,
more about that.
we could be like many others in this world that just focus on the wins, but we're gonna be honest and take the L's when we get them, but we're gonna do our best to get some more W's this week.
Yeah, exactly. It's not always roses. That's for sure. We're gonna get started here with talking about our, of course, beverages here as we get rolling. We'll talk about last week's picks. We'll talk about some of the headlines of the week. We've got a couple of topics to throw at you, and then of course we'll get into our picks here for this week, a full week of football. There's a lot going on here this week, and a lot of good games actually on the schedule. So we got plenty to talk about. That's for sure. Good weekend for myself. I enjoyed the weekend football wise as far as my teams were concerned. Iowa State got it done at home. Chiefs just pulled one off here this afternoon on the road. And my fantasy teams got one locked in already here in the evening game. I'm feeling good about it.
I can sharing the good vibes this week. A nice Friday night win, which we can maybe touch on later. Nebraska took down Illinois, so that's always nice to see. And like I said, we'll talk about the Friday night deal here maybe later on in the show. But yeah, fantasy world, I'm with you there. It seems like I got pretty locked up, and I don't care for the dude, but Kittle just nabbed a touchdown here right before we started recording, so I'll take those points where I can get them.
Yeah, I got the points on the other side of that connection, so I'm feeling good about it.
Either way, yep, see ya.
All right, so as we get going here, I know you've got a special one, so I'm going to let you go second here. Mine's not near as exciting as what you're drinking over there, but I do love these things. I'm actually not going beer tonight. I'm going canned cocktail, which normally isn't really like a good thing to do because a lot of them aren't very good. But this little line I really actually like, and they're pretty solid and they actually taste fresh. This line's called Joya Spirit, and the one that I'm drinking is a Moscow Mule, and it's vodka, ginger, apricot, and lime, and it's got like that real ginger taste. And yeah, they're money. These things are good, so we keep these around the house usually. How about
Yes,
yourself?
nice. Sounds like a nice little find there. Like you said, the few and far between, but every night I found I'm gonna need you to give me a hell yeah.
Hell
I
yeah!
got Steve Austin's Broken Skull. El Segundo Brewing makes this, the American lager. I'm not going IPA, but can't go wrong with a Steve Weiser. I know we've cracked many of these in our day. It may or may not have been 30 Stones back when we were going hard, but he stepped his game up a little bit here with the Broken Skull version of his cold one. So yeah, I'm trying one of those. Honestly, it's a good beer. I believe it's in the LA area. I don't know, kind of
Oh,
give or
gotcha.
take a few miles. It's in that region, but yeah, it's pretty good beer, and even the IPA I've heard is really good. Maybe give that a shot if anybody's interested in the IPA. It's not my cup of tea, but I do know they're a popular type of beverage out there these days.
All right, pick up some broken skulls because Stone Cold said so. We told you about some things this week, and like we said, we were maybe kind of half and half going with our picks this week. So let's do a recap for you. We started off on Thursday night, and I was feeling really good about this one when I was watching it for a little while. I was tracking the score. Western Kentucky was beating up on Louisiana Tech. And of course, Tech has to come back later in the game and make it close enough to get the push. Ended up being a 7 point game, 35-28. So that was a little disappointing. Not the way you want to start the week. And that kind of carried over into Friday for us as well because you had that over 55, the K State Okie State game, and ended up being 29-21. Okie State pulled the upset, but not as many points as we certainly were thinking in that one, that's for sure.
Yeah, not so much surprised that K State didn't pull it out. The Oklahoma State, took them down, especially being a Friday or a Thursday night kind of special, being at home, got the crowd revved up. Mullet Man's on the sideline doing his thing. He's a man. He's over 40, but he's still a man.
He's
But
trying to
so
save
that
his
that wasn't
job, yeah.
necessarily as that wasn't necessarily as surprising. But the fact that the offenses weren't as, and I'm not even going to say it was that great a defense. Just not so much great offense going on there. So that was a little bit surprising, but I mean, it's the way it goes. Some nights just you don't have it offensively. Some nights you do, and these teams didn't really have it. A lot of field goals, a lot of missed opportunities from just the action that I caught between the two.
Yeah. So that was late Friday there, and then we moved on into the weekend and had plenty for you Saturday. Started off with the old Red River shootout. I refuse to call it the Red River rivalry because that's just dumb. But
Tough to say too. So I mean, that's too many.
well, I mean they got rid of it because people were actually shooting each other, so that's kind of a problem. But Texas did not get it done. We kind of thought that the Longhorns would hammer the Sooners a bit, but they come up short, 34-30. Not necessarily any kind of blowout either way, but was a real rough start to the game the way it sounded. I didn't get to watch this one because I was traveling to go to the game I was going to, but just a lot of miscues and turnovers, it sounded like, early in the game. Kind of sloppy for both teams, really.
Well, and there was also, points throughout the game where it looked like Texas could maybe pull away or put them away, and just, it was kind of one of those things. Like obviously they wasn't a big favorite. What was my 5 points they were getting, so it wasn't anything major, but it looked like they could maybe put them away and kind of just let them hang around. And I mean through over time even, but just especially in the last 10 or so years in those big games, Oklahoma's been known to find a little bit a play here or there, make some kind of insane, outrageous type of, big plays when they need them. And they did it again on Saturday. So, great win for them, but kind of, like I said, just one of those things we didn't see happening. But I mean,
yeah. I mean, I guess
the way it goes.
I guess I guess I could have kind of should have thought this was maybe going to be the way this would pan out, just because Texas is finally looking like they're on track, and of course it would have to be Oklahoma that comes in and craps on their season a little bit. So, interesting. But Sooners get that one, and we come out a loser there. Maryland, Ohio State. Now, this is another one of those where we're going to talk about technicalities, because when we brought it to you, it was 18.5 that the Terps were getting, and I don't know what the heck happened at the end of that game, because it was tied late in the second half, and all of a sudden Ohio State rips off 3 straight touchdowns in the fourth quarter to pull away to win at 37-17. But by the time you had placed the wager on the game, SJ, things had changed a little bit.
Yeah, we ended up getting a couple more points, so we were still able to cover that spread. So, like we said last week, sometimes the book's in your favor, and that's a little bit of an advantage that you have in certain cases where you may live in a state that doesn't have mobile or in-person gaming or sports betting in your state. So, as the case for me, I have to travel across the neighboring border to the neighboring state to make my plays. And by the time I did that, I got 2 points. So made it 20.5. So I was able to cover that number just barely, but we covered. So we'll take it. Yeah, that's all you need, right? Just cover, baby. That's what we say every day. So we'll take it. But yeah, that was one of those times when it plays in your favor, and we're going to take advantage of that fully.
Yeah, well, and things can go one way or the other throughout the week. Those lines are always going to move. I mean, that's kind of what the books want to have happen. They're going to put the line out there to start the week with make it something enticing to get some movement on it, and then eventually probably it does one way or the other, and that's how it played out here this time around in that scenario. So interesting then there. But yeah, late push by Ohio State to win that game. That was bizarre. And then LSU, Mizzou, you had the over 62.5, which sounds ridiculous for an SEC football game, but no problem there. 88 points total. Holy cow. Nobody playing defense.
Just speaking for myself personally, I've always kind of thought the SEC SEC defense was kind of a fraud in the big scheme of things. It was more of just a lack of offense. Now that they've started getting the more modern quarterback, you've seen the numbers just go through the roof, and it's no discredit to their team. They still have good teams, good football. Don't get me wrong, but they just kind of caught up with the times of what everybody else was doing, and so you can't really hang your hat on the 13-10, 10-7, 17-10 type games anymore, just because the offensive weapons are there, because we know speed and talent's everywhere in that conference. So I'm not saying anything bad about these teams, but as far as just having outrageous 85 Bears type defenses, that maybe wasn't always the case. It just looked like it because of the way that their offenses were either designed, schemed, or just the players that they had. So
Yeah.
either way, we got the over, so that's what we're happy about. But just that's kind of my take on it. I look at a lot of those SEC games these days, and I'm looking at that total a lot because of that. Just
Yeah.
there's points to be had out there. Even some of the games where another game that we lost that hit the overs too. So there's plenty of opportunities out there. With a lot of points being scored in that league.
Yeah, no
And
doubt.
you look at Oklahoma, Texas coming across here,
Yeah.
and next year
Yeah.
there's going to be even more points put up.
Mhm.
So look
Yep,
out.
that's
It's
what
going to
they
be the Big 12 East, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think too the other thing you don't see as often is kind of like the consistency with some of those programs that, especially when you talk about LSU. You think, great secondaries, just talented
Mhm.
defenses are going to really slow you down and shut you down. But they've been giving up a lot of points this year throughout the season, not just in that game. So it's not always every year you can do the same thing year in and year out. I think those styles always change a lot now.
Well, it's
Uh,
not an easy thing to do
yeah,
either. So, like, don't get me wrong. It's not like we're like, I can't believe this. Like, no,
yeah,
it's hard. Defense is a hard. I mean, this the way the game's changed with the way it's called and the
hmm
just the advantages they've made to the offense. That's just the way the game is. Like, you're not going to see those type of defenses we seen 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even.
yeah, no doubt. And then a couple others here. Washington State unfortunately did not get it done on the road at UCLA. They were up for a while, quite a while in that game, but UCLA made some plays late to pull away and win it. 25-17 was the final, so we lost that one. Wazoo was only getting 3. And then Kansas took care of business against Central Florida. They beat them up 51-22, ended up being the final, but they were blowing them out from the get-go in that game. They were up big in that first half. So that was an easy cover. And then, unfortunately, we had thought that Kentucky could hang around a bit with Georgia, but apparently it was the week that Georgia
Nope.
decided to wake up.
Nope. Yeah.
I wonder
Go
if the
ahead.
dogs were a bit perturbed maybe from last week, being that close game they were in the week before.
Yeah, that was one of more of those. Maybe you're used to kind of just the old woodshed beating, just a straight ass kicking. So, no mystery about that. At least at minimum, if I'm gonna lose a play, I'd rather know right away. Don't make me sweat. Get over with. Okay, I'm done. I can move on to the next game. So,
hmm
I mean, that's the only silver lining there is that we knew right away that there's not gonna be a competitive game on that day.
Yeah, and unfortunately for me, that was the final leg of one of my parlays I had going on Saturday,
How it
so that
goes,
was
man.
not good. Yep, and that's the way it went. I had I had two three teamers going, got 4, and it was the last game in both of them that just went south. So that's how it goes sometimes. And that brings me to kind of the next topic. I ended up breaking my own gambling rule, and I sent you a message about this the other day on Saturday when I went to the game in Ames. But I don't know about you, but there's sometimes when you show up on game day, you get the sense of the atmosphere and the crowd. Of course, especially when you have something else that's going on outside of the game. This weekend for Iowa State, they were celebrating the 100th anniversary of the death of Jack Trice, who the stadium is named after. He was the first African American to play for Iowa State, ended up suffering an injury on the field that ended up causing his death. He wrote a letter in the hotel before that game that was very inspirational, kind of, talking about the race relations at the time and how big of a deal he thought it was that he was playing, and he wanted to make everybody proud. And it's just a really cool story. So there were a lot of things going on around the game. They wore special uniforms. They had some different videos going on. So it was kind of one of those nights where you're like, they're not gonna lose this game. This crowd's gonna be into it. Everybody's gonna be rocking. So I was like, you know what? I've had a rough day so far here as far as the way the results have come out. So I put some coin down on the Cyclones, and that kind of covered my butt for the day and got my money back that I lost previously. So I don't know. Sometimes you just got to go with that and roll with something you're feeling a little bit.
No, I'll back you 100% on that because I know, like in earlier podcasts, I believe a first or second episode, if anybody wants to go back and check that out, we kind of give the kind of the rundown of our how we like to play and our I guess our whatever you call it, process or
Yeah.
our our
Philosophy,
mindset when
yeah.
it comes to gambling and betting. Yeah, and one of the things I lean on, and I know there's very many in the industry and people that do this, whether it be for a job or just on the side regularly, that kind of poo-poo the idea of, going with your gut and, making it more of a numbers game and it's all analytics, which I agree with that to an extent. But, just the way I like to look at it, I'd much rather, I don't want to lose any bet, but if I'm going to lose a bet, I'd rather kind of go out on my shield, so to speak, go with my gut and what I feel. And especially when you're speaking of being on site in person. Of course, there's situations where you maybe get caught up in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but the difference between that and what it just feels like. Maybe watching the teams warm up, you see something you don't like, and those are always small things, just body language to read and things like that. So I'm with you there. Like I trust my gut probably more than maybe sometimes I should. People could say if they're but or maybe they feel the same way I do. But I'd much rather go that way than a chart or a graph or an Excel sheet. I don't anybody that does that, go ahead, feel free, do your thing.
Yep.
That's just I'm talking about myself. Like I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I can much rather live with my gut than a pie chart. That's just me.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and like I said, I'd felt it kind of earlier in the day, and then I just thought, this is one of those situations where it's going to be good. And then when everything got, built up at the beginning of the game, they had a nice video about Jack Trice, and then the intro, they ended up having a whole bunch of like fireworks that they shot off while the team went onto the field, and it was just like, yeah, TCU's toast. This is we're not losing this game. So and they did. They played really well. So I give them a lot of credit because they got it done on the field too. They didn't just kind of lean on all the hype surrounding it. They went out there and got it done. So that was fun. Couple of things over the weekend. We already kind of touched on the Texas-Oklahoma game. Of course, that was one of the big ones that people were looking at. A couple other games I just wanted to throw notes out there on that were kind of interesting. This was one we were watching as we were sitting at the tailgate. Alabama kind of escaped one against Texas A&M. 26-20 was the final in that game. And there was a very interesting play towards the end of that one that I thought I'd bring up. I don't know if you saw this, but Alabama was trying to drive to just kind of melt the rest of the clock away because they had the lead towards the end of the game. And they threw a little short passing route that was going to be short of the line to gain that they needed. So the receiver had went down to a knee to try to catch the ball because it was a low throw. Just kind of natural instinct. He went down to go get it. Well, it hit his hands, but he did not secure the ball at all. It kind of just popped straight up in the air. Well, then he brought that knee off the ground, got himself in kind of a little squat, caught the ball, and then took off and ran and picked up the first down. So it was one of those scenarios where if he would have actually caught the ball the way he should have, he would have been down and the play's over. But because he never really possessed it and just popped it in the air, he was able to grab it and keep going. And it's just those little things that you don't see all the time that then happen in a big moment in a game like that. It's just always really kind of interesting and fun to see those plays when they happen like that.
Well, I'd kind of point it back to just mention of Oklahoma earlier. Just that's the reason teams like that win those games. It might not be pretty. We look at the highlights and see like the big plays, but just I guess you call it small. Maybe it was luck, whatever it was. They just always seem to come up with that play when they need it. Mm-hmm. I know it's not been the Alabama year that they've wanted probably so far, but they're still in the thick of it. Just having that name, they'll get a shot if these other teams keep losing, but. At the same time, they still know how to win those games, and those players have kind of been in those situations either on the field or on the sidelines, and that it's kind of like one of those things you just don't blink in the moment. And there's obviously A&M's been the opposite of that, so you got to factor that into the mix too. But it's just those type of teams that making a play is what they want to do. They're not hoping the other team makes a mistake. I guess that's the best way to put it. They want to make the play. They're trying to win. They're not trying not to lose.
Yeah, exactly. Another one I saw the score late. I didn't see any of this game because it was so late, and it was not one that was on my radar really at all anyways. But USC had to go to overtime to survive against Arizona late in the night, so that was kind of a little bit of surprise. They're not a team that I've been sold on at all the full season. I think there's still a lot of holes in the defensive effort there for them, and that's probably what caught them again. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do here moving forward because yet another big game coming up for Notre Dame this weekend as they take on USC. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that was a crazy game last night. 3 overtimes, well past my bedtime. Don't get me wrong, I tried to stay up, but I just couldn't make it. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, it was one of those watching it, fall asleep on the couch, you wake up like, oh, what happened? Well, where's the game go? It's freaking playing the ShamWow commercials. You're like, I missed something here. Like something ain't right.
Why is this infomercial on during my football game? Come on.
I did grab that score at the end and go back and watch the highlights. But yeah, like you said, I'm with you, man. They're winning games because of Caleb Williams, basically, and they got good receivers, good running backs. Don't get me wrong, but it's just crazy that you can have that many athletes on your roster and your defense be. I mean, I guess chalk it up to scheme. There's just they just don't put any emphasis on it. Who knows? If they knew, obviously they would, fix it and get a better defense out there. But it's just crazy how you can have that great of an offense and that bad of a defense.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking of the other team on the other side of the ledger that they have coming up. Notre Dame loses to Louisville, 33-20 the final there. Big win there for the Cardinals.
Yeah, that was kind of one of those situations that I mentioned, seemed like, at least to me, where how Oklahoma State had the home crowd. That Louisville stadium was just freaking nuts, man. They were I turned off like, man, it's winning the playoffs, the bowl game, like what's going on? Like they were ready, man. I give them credit. You don't think of that being that. I mean, they've had some success, obviously, in the past with some, pretty big name players, obviously. But just you haven't thought of Louisville. I'm saying Louisville. That's how I say Louisville. Other thing takes too much work. Like, I don't got that kind of a jaw. But anyways, like they've had some success, like in recent years. But you just don't think of them as like a football powerhouse or being a tough place to play. But on that night, they came ready to play, and Notre Dame's in the situation which they always have been. But kind of getting back to where the more of their tradition of being a top 10, top 5 team, they're going to get everybody's best shot no matter what. We saw it last week against Duke, almost took them out, and then they got Louisville got the job done. But it's kind of, you got to be ready for it. And so the players on the team may not be quite as prepared as some of the teams we talked about earlier, being Oklahoma or Alabama, that have been in those big games, because especially when you factor in the transfer rules the way they are now and how players can switch teams. It's not like you sat on the bench for 2 years behind your, two or three All-Americans to get to that spot. Sometimes you're just jumping ship and starting the next year. So you're not exactly prepared for that type of setting, whatever uniform you have on, if you go from a Wake Forest to Notre Dame in Notre Dame's quarterback's case, like it's not like he's not used to wearing that Notre Dame jersey. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but it's a little bit different than what maybe, you kind of, there's a little bit more pressure that goes with that gold dome than a WF on the side of your head, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, like you said, Louisville's kind of been one of those programs where they've had some really great seasons, but it usually has been kind of like they've got this one guy, the Lamar Jackson, like they've got this guy that leads them and they're really good. But now Jeff Brom, it appears, made a really, really good decision. Obviously, it's a place he wanted to go back to because that's where he's from and wanted to be a part of that. But, man, he's really turned them in the right direction and, like you said, maybe brought that kind of excitement and atmosphere that he wants, and maybe that's because he is that hometown guy and it builds it up a little bit more. So who knows, but that's a huge win for them. That's be awesome to see what they do, I guess, kind of moving forward here as well, since they're off to such a great start here this season. So that was some of the big games here this weekend. We had another topic we wanted to touch on here as well, because you brought this up earlier. Your team played on Friday night in a game that they won against Illinois, and this is becoming more and more common. And as we're going to talk about in our picks here coming up, we've got games pretty much all week long now going on, because that's the way the television wants it. They want more inventory. They want more nights with games on, and it really has changed the whole dynamic of how schedules are set up, and you're going to see more and more of those Thursday, Friday night games for the big conferences, because obviously that's what the networks want. But when the conference gets bigger as well, then they're going to draw that inventory somewhere else. That just naturally is what's going to happen. But it definitely is something that's controversial. There's people that feel pretty passionately about it on both sides.
Yeah, it's not just Taco Tuesday anymore. We got football, every night of the week anymore these days. And I see. I like it. I'm going to say I like it, but I do see both sides of the argument. If you want to call it an argument, I don't know what. Yeah. I'm sure that people get pissed off about anything anymore. So I'm sure somebody's out there railing on it, whoever it may be. But like, the first way I see is why I like it is just, in my situation, you can relate to this, having kids youth sports, just activities on other weekends. It makes it a little bit easier in my world to have a Friday night game and then be able to do stuff Saturday. I know like both of us still dabble in a bit of a high school football coverage. So that can make things tricky too if you're, maybe working a game that night or whatever, and maybe some people don't have the freedom or just have to work Fridays and that's their job's a night job and they work, Monday through Friday, but they have the weekends off. So I mean, I get those sides of the point, but to me, it's getting to the point where like you said, the conferences are getting so big that you have, if you want these games to be on TV, which is, I mean, that's the deal, right? All these teams
Mhm.
are getting this money because they're going to be showing the promise that the networks are making them is that your fans, your recruits, everyone's going to be able to watch you play every game of the season, and just a numbers game. There's only so many 3-hour slots on Saturday
Mhm.
where they can play. So I mean, for that part of it, that's pretty simple. I get while it takes some adjusting and getting used to, but I honestly don't recall. I mean, when NFL went to Thursday night, I mean, I think that was like I'm sure there was a big,
Mhm.
pushback against that at that time. Maybe it was different just because there wasn't, the social media world wasn't as big as it is now.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of like a given. Even the London games playing at, we're both in Central Time, 8:30 in the morning Central Time. If you're on the
Yeah.
West Coast, it's a 6:30 a.m. game.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just we want to get a bigger audience, so you go, across the pond. But that's putting your American viewers, you're in the states here, where your organization's based, they're putting them in a hard spot. And I mean, just being a combat sports like boxing, UFC, MMA type fan, there's a lot of events that you know the main fights and the main card's not starting until after 11:30. So I mean, I guess I'm just kind of used to dealing with it different times.
Mhm.
So if you want to watch it, I think you're going to watch it. If you want to complain, I think you're going to complain. Both can be true.
Mhm.
I get why it makes it tough for some people to see it, but the good thing is these days we have a technology, DVR type things. You hit that record and just have it ready to watch at your leisure and get away from your phone, which I
Yeah.
would
Good
recommend at
stuff.
times to anybody. Like just for instance, I'm not the only one to do this, so I'm not claiming I'm inventing some great idea or anything like that. But if I can't watch a game, I just turn my phone off, do what I got to do, and then I come back and start it from the beginning. Just
Mhm.
watch and catch up as I go, and just stay. Obviously we want to avoid the spoilers. I get that, so just stay off your phone, man, and just watch the game till you catch back up, and then see your pissed off texts from your friends or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll play the devil's advocate a little bit on the other side of this because obviously what I did for 16 years was cover high school sports, and so pretty much every Friday night throughout the year, whether it be football, basketball season, a good majority of the year, that's what I'm doing. I'm out at a gym or I'm in a press box at a football field covering a game, and it kind of has been that tradition that it's for those amateur athletes, the high school kids. That's their night to shine. Friday Night Lights. They made a damn TV show and a movie about it, so it's a big deal. And it's their opportunity to have that stage, and that's where the focus goes. And I think it makes a difference to when you're in rural parts of the country as well,
Mhm.
because it's such a community event. Some of the bigger towns maybe don't, you don't have that as much because you just don't build that kind of sense of community since there's so many people. But yeah, it's a community activity. Everybody comes out to do their part, whether it be working the concession stand or helping out in the press box, running the chains. A lot of people have lots of things they need to do those nights to make those events happen for those kids. And I think it's unfortunate that then the college game is kind of stepping their toes on top of it. And I think that's amplified a little bit here in our region because there's so much more of that Midwest care about those events. I think there might be some of the coast where that's not as big a deal sometimes to people. But I think it is a big deal to a lot of people around these parts. And I've heard, speeches from multiple coaches at that level. There was one, I believe it was Indiana's head coach the other day that went on a little nice rant about that because he was not happy about having to play on a Friday. And Kirk Ferentz has been vocal about it at Iowa for a long time. times, saying that, and the University of Iowa's pretty much kind of told the Big Ten that we're going to do as much as we can to push back on you having a Friday game at our place. Obviously, they've been stuck playing somewhere else, but they've done a pretty good job of avoiding it on their home field. I think when it comes push to shove, the conference is going to win anyways if that's what they want to happen. But it's interesting, and like you mentioned, with the conferences expanding, I don't know anymore that you can avoid it. It's a problem that's just there and it's going to happen. And yeah, I guess you find your way to make the best of it. That's what we'll all do. But it is, to me, in my eyes, there's times where that's unfortunate. I don't, they have plenty of time to have their moments. And personally, the other part of it too is I just love the Saturday. I love college football Saturday, and I think sometimes it sucks when you don't have that and you look forward to.
Yeah, that was definitely a point I was going to, kind of piggyback off your comments here. It's a little strange because we actually have 3 Friday games, or take that back. A Thursday night to start the season, Nebraska did, and then Friday against Illinois, and then they always play Black Friday, so that's it's a holiday, so it's a little different later in the season. But it is kind of weird to have that Saturday, and when everybody has their team, whoever it may be, and you kind of wake up, you got your routine, or maybe you meet up with certain friends or go to a certain bars, or cook a certain thing and fire up the grill, whatever. And it is kind of weird to not have that little traditional, because you only get 12 of these a year. That's kind of, that's what I tell people when they're like, oh, you want to do this or that, like, bro, not during football season, we got 40 other weeks, we can do anything you want. But I was just like, people that don't, it's kind of the same way with whatever team, or kind of Sundays for NFL fans, if you will, be, obviously we both watch the NFL still, but Saturdays are just a little different in my book. So I will say that it is kind of weird to not have that Saturday kind of routine that maybe you're used to having. But at the same time, I kind of would add on to what you said, is maybe in the future we can see some of these high schools in areas where it could be possible. Maybe they shift their game to Saturday, and maybe within that state or that area when the big schools playing Friday night. Who knows? That's just an option. I'm sure it might come up when it gets to be even more than it is now. But like I said, I see both sides. I'm not so dead set on one way or the other. It's just interesting that kind of just an interesting topic that I've kind of seen a little bit more talked about lately, just because it's really getting out there even more. Just other conferences that have never done it before are starting to really get out there on different nights, and even different apps, and the Peacock's really hammering it with these games. So I know heard a lot of pushback about getting that, but that's one of the cheaper apps you can get. So I'm not really hearing those comments. I'm just like, whatever you want to do. It's about a third of the price of Netflix. So.
Well, yeah, and that's the other side of this coin too, with the whole conference expansion stuff and these deals and whatever. Obviously the conference that I follow, this has happened for a while, just because they caved to whatever the network wanted them to do. ESPN wanted to put stuff on ESPN Plus, so that's what they did. But now the other conferences are starting to see that happen, and I actually think it's kind of funny, because they used to make fun of my team because, oh, well, you're only on whatever. Well, now you're only on whatever. This is what's going to happen. You're going to be stuck on these streaming platforms too. There's going to be no way to avoid a little bit of that also. So yeah, it is what it is. Get used to it, because it's probably not going away anytime soon. That's for sure.
This is obviously a different angle to that conversation, but at the least I do hope too, because I run into it here just trying to watch some of the local teams, whether it be like MLB, ML soccer, Major League Baseball soccer. At the least, I wish these streamers and networks would get together and just, if you live in the market, please just make these channels available with whatever service you have, because there's still still a lot of blackout issues. I just don't understand, being in 2023, how that's still a thing. So that's just one kind of caveat I put on top of it. College football has done way better than that with not doing the blackout thing, but that's just kind of to kind of put a cherry on this conversation here. Just make it accessible, and I think the fans will still be there. They may not be happy, but especially when it comes to college football, then most people are diehards and they're going to support their team.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Let's get into some picks now here for this upcoming week of football. Lots of good stuff out there. And we've got some early week stuff, so we might as well make a few picks along the way if there's going to be football on. I know you got a couple that'll kind of tickle the senses here for the degenerate gambler out there.
Yeah, sometimes you got the itch, you just got to scratch, you know what I'm saying? Like, ooh. It feels good to win those Tuesday night football games. You can't tell me it doesn't.
That extra $4 coming in feels good, baby.
Oh man, yeah.
Hmm.
All right, so we're gonna start with I like on Tuesday night. App State's getting 5 points against Coastal Carolina. Actually, App State's the only two losses they've had is against, and they're both one-score games, Wyoming and North Carolina. So they've kind of put a nice program out there this year. And Coastal Carolina, all their three losses are about like 10+ points, and not they have not played great competition. I like App State in that one -5 just to get the week going, get you a couple extra tacos there on Tuesday.
I love Taco Tuesday around here. Folks know
Listen,
that.
man,
So definitely got to be good. Get those juices flowing. I know you got one on Wednesday too. That's gonna keep the ball rolling, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not just Wings Day anymore, man. We got football, we got everything coming out here. I'm going back to the well on this one. They were good to me last time, so I gotta repay the favor back there. FIU +2.5 against UTEP. They're at home, and UTEP 1-5 crew, and they've actually lost their last 4 games. So not looking good for the Miners there. So I like FIU to cover that 2.5. I wasn't getting very good number on the money line, so I'm gonna have to stick with the 2.5 for now. But just for maybe people that are gonna bet later in the week, and like we mentioned earlier in the show, oftentimes I don't bet till later in the week, having to cross state lines. So I may end up taking a money line on that. But just for the show, officially we'll go with the +2.5 for FIU.
All right. I've got one earlier in the week too. I'm going to throw out here for you. This is for Thursday night, so I guess we're hitting all the nights here for you. That'll be good. West Virginia is laying 3.5 on the road at Houston. Been really impressed with what the Mountaineers have accomplished so far. Neil Brown was on the hottest seat in the country probably coming into the season, but he has found a way to get his team to win some games. They won a nice one last week, or a week ago, not this past week, but the week before that at TCU. And then they've had some time to now get rested up and prepped here for this Houston contest. Houston has not been real impressive to me. Of course, West Virginia's playing their old coach as well, and Mr. Holgerson. I'm sure they're going to want to lay it on him. I like West Virginia in that spot a lot. I'm going to take them laying the 3.5.
All right, next pick I got, we're going to shift over to the traditional Saturday that you love so much.
Yes,
so let's go ahead and get back to that. I don't want to get you all, frazzled here, so we'll get you back to Saturday football. I like BYU +5 at TCU. I know it's a road game, and no, this isn't a shot at your squad, but no. You guys, Iowa State really high-handled TCU, very made it look easy. I think that's kind of one of those losses. It maybe sticks with you a week or two. It's kind of hard to bounce back from. I know it was like you talked about, a different type of environment, not maybe your normal Saturday affair, some a little bit more of a celebration there, but at the same time that was an impressive win. And BYU's only loss is to a one-loss Kansas team who's I'm not doing the math here, but Kansas only lost to Texas. So both teams are they've put out a good product this year. So I'm pretty confident in BYU covering the 5 there at TCU.
All right, yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm gonna jump over to the Big Ten here. Ohio State, even though they were not very impressive this past week and had to kind of lay the late touchdowns on to beat Maryland, they are 20.5-point favorites at Purdue. Purdue lost at Iowa this past weekend and just could not get much going. It didn't sound like it in that game. They've been kind of overall pretty disappointing here this year. Their only wins have come against some teams that are really, really struggling. I think Ohio State's going to be kind of a little bit perturbed with the way that they played this last week. I also think Maryland's a heck of a lot better team than Purdue. I'm going to go ahead and lay those points and take Ohio State to win that one big.
All right, next one I like is a team that I went against earlier this season, and they've actually proved to be a pretty solid squad. That's Wyoming. They're actually getting 9.5 points. Another road team at Air Force. So as long as we're on the ground, not in the air, I feel pretty good about this game here. Wyoming actually has knocked off Fresno State last week, who was 24th ranked coming in. Big win there. And they also beat Texas Tech, which that was the week I went against them in week 1. So they've had a couple of impressive wins. So I think that's a pretty good outfit this season. So I like them to cover the 9.5 against Air Force. I'm not sure about a win, but I believe they'll stay within a touchdown or so, maybe in a field goal type game. I could see that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna go. I guess it's kind of odd. I'm sticking to the that same game that I've been talking about here. The Maryland Terrapins. They get to host Illinois coming up here this week, and they're only laying 14. I think Maryland overall is a pretty good team. Illinois has just continued to kind of spiral downwards. They do not got much going on either side of the football. Really, it doesn't appear. So I like the Terps in that one, even though they're laying a fairly decent number.
Yeah, I could see that very easy happen. That's a nice pick there. Just seeing them for a full game last Friday night, not Saturday. Um, they did not look very good. Honestly, I was kind of disappointed in win by more, but you got to take the W's when you can get them. So I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
The last pick I have this week, and it was maybe we can get into this a little bit here. A bit of a snafu last week, but I actually do like Miami getting 3.5 at North Carolina. But basically, a lot of this is kind of on the strength of their defense. They've had a pretty strong rush defense. I think they're only giving up about 60 yards a game. And as far as last week, if you missed it, I'm sure you didn't. Basically, had the chance to kneel the clock out. For some reason, Cristobal decides to run it, fumble, of course, and Georgia Tech recovers. But no problem. They still got to go, 70-some yards with about, 30 seconds or whatever. Under a minute for sure left. 2 plays, they get it done. Get the winning touchdown, no big deal. So, I mean, I'm just kind of going on the fact that I think Miami's going to come in real pissed off and looking for something to prove. I just think they kind of, I don't know, it's one of those things. They're almost like a better team on the road. I know that's technically their home, home field at Hard Rock there where the Dolphins play. Just, I mean, maybe half full last week. Just not they're almost like better. It's kind of like, a lot of teams want to do that us against the world thing, and everybody's against us. Miami, they did that before anyone ever thought. I mean, they've perfected that. That's basically their thing. Like, I don't like them. I never root for them. Don't get me wrong. Unless I bet on them, and I'm still not, wanting. I don't care if they win or not. I just want to cover the 3.5. So don't get me wrong. I'm not a Miami fan by any means, but it seems like they're one of those teams that when they're kind of up against it, when they have a good team, obviously they had some down seasons, but when they have a quality squad and they're kind of up against it, they're real good at kind of just punching back when someone backs them in a corner. So I like them to cover the 3.5 at North Carolina.
All right, that's a good one there too. I'm gonna throw one more out here. I'm a little bit hesitant on this just because I think it's kind of been unpredictable in some of these SEC games so far this year. But Auburn coming off that test that they gave Georgia there a couple weeks ago. And then LSU, in the way that they have not played defense much here throughout the season, Auburn's getting 12 at LSU. I like the Auburn Tigers to be able to cover that and hang within. Whether they or not they win, it's a little tough, at that location. But I think they'll keep this game close. I like them getting that many points, so I'm gonna roll with Auburn there in that one. Another couple of notes I just wanted to throw out there as far as the slate that you got to sit down and enjoy here this weekend, because there's some doozies coming up here this week as far as the schedule is concerned. We've got a big game going on. We mentioned, of course, already that Notre Dame USC contest. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Another one that's very interesting out in the Pac-12 is Oregon is at Washington, a couple of undefeated teams. Washington is just basically getting the home field advantage with the 3 points right now, but that's going to be a heck of a game. That's going to prove a lot. The only thing I was looking at those schedules earlier because I thought about maybe that'd be a fun game to pick just because it's a good game. But man, Washington's schedule still a little bit shaky. I mean, they've won big, but they haven't really played anybody tough yet. So that's going to be a fun game to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, the games you mentioned, out of the games you mentioned, is kind of that Oregon Washington. Obviously, kind of if I'm going to do something with that, maybe look at the overs on that. Even the Notre Dame USC could be an overplay if someone's looking at maybe just not maybe confident in picking a winner in both those games, because I'm at the situation I could see either team winning both those games. It's a coin flip in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd like another game to throw out that just maybe keep an eye on is Iowa is getting 9.5 against Wisconsin. That seems like a big. I mean, I don't expect it to be some back and forth shootout or anything like that. Just being the way the type those teams play. But I mean that's a pretty big number, and two of the teams that are thought to be the top two teams and maybe in that division of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I was surprised too when I saw that because it's not like Wisconsin's done anything to really impress me and blow my socks off. And I realize Iowa's got their struggles and they continue to have that. They didn't complete a pass to a wide receiver in that win this last week over Purdue. So it's just odd the way that they get things done. But usually they hang around. That's what they do. So yeah, that's a lot of points. That'll be interesting to watch as well to see how that plays out. A&M goes on the road to take on Tennessee. I think that's kind of an intriguing game just to see how if A&M can stay up off the mat or if their season kind of just totally goes off the rails for them as far as their opinion of it is concerned. So yeah, some fun games to keep an eye on here this weekend. That's for sure. It should be a great weekend of college football, and we look forward to watching it, and we look forward to giving you some covers here this week. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, for the after dark crowd, maybe keep an eye on the overs on that San Diego State Hawaii game. It's 52.5 on my book right now, so that I could see them, surpassing that and then some with the late night crowd. Got a 10 p.m. Central start on that one. So I'm sorry they might go to Sunday. So I don't know if we're good with college football on Sunday, but it's probably going to go to Sunday, at least where we're at. But all jokes aside, that should be one of those kind of crazy after dark games. It looks like to be setting up for that.
Yeah, after dark turned into after morning, I guess. Well, Austin 316 says go bet some games here this weekend. Keep drinking that fine Stone Cold brew over there.
You got to tell me twice.
All right. Well, that's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us again. Again, if you can share with your friends that love college football, we'd really appreciate that. We'd like to get some more interaction with you. If you have anything that you want us to talk about, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. We've been pushing the promos out for these episodes, and just hit us up there, and we'll maybe bring up your topic in the program, get you involved, and we hope you're having fun with us. And then you can, of course, like and share and give us those great reviews and all that as well. So appreciate you joining us. We'll be back again next week on Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next week for some more covers.